What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and today is the day that the Arcade1up X-Men 97 cabinet remains stock no more. I got an idea to put a different game inside and change the outside so that it's more of a fitting tribute to the X-Men. Let's get started. One of the downfalls, design flaws, as far as when it comes to modifying this thing or changing something anyway, on the Midway style Deluxe cabinets or the Midway style cabinets period, is the marquee. While it's a vast improvement over what we got in the past, especially those third generation marquees are pretty damn bad, swapping this out is not straightforward. It's not that easy. Okay, so the bolts that I removed were these 4 bolts here, and then the 4 screws that connect the monitor board to the side panel. So really just everything from about here up. All those bolts have been removed, and it gives me just enough flex where I can twist this just a little bit, kind of twist myself into a pretzel here. Use my knee to push on the back side, separates the side panel just enough. You can see you have that flex. You can move this thing around a lot. Don't go crazy, but if you do it just right, you'll give yourself enough room to take this marquee out, put your new marquee in. Use your knee to push in the back and slide it into place like that. And then with that in place, you can go ahead and just line everything back up, make sure the dowels fall into place. Right? Eventually that will happen. There we go, just like that. Work your way around this part of the panel. Everything pops into place. Push the back panel. Oh yeah, there we go. That's gonna go like that. And then once everything lines up, locks into place, you can just put the screws back in, go ahead and put all your end caps on, stand this thing up, and continue on with the process. Boom. Now this is not necessarily a bad design. I don't mind that. I like it. I understand you're trying to pay tribute to the television show, the cartoon. I get it. But if we're going to do this in a collaboration, a true collaboration, we want to do something on the front to commemorate both the cartoon and the game that's going to be on the cabinet. So these deluxe cabinets come standard with these little speakers and, of course, speaker grills, which is no big deal. I think it's better than the hole that we used to have in those like third generation cabinets. And another cool thing is you can swap these out with different speaker rings. We'll get that screwed in a minute. Different speaker rings you can find on Amazon. Now, they, like I said, they come stock with this black color, and I've used red and blue and silver, but for this cabinet, we're going to use gold because why not? And I like gold. Okay, so for the controls of this cabinet, obviously you saw that the artwork was pretty much a straightforward swap, nothing really too crazy there. The controls are going to be something different. It's not just something as simple as just eliminating some of the buttons. That's not going to work out quite as well. You're going to have to do some splicing to make this work. In order to have the one-player joystick control 2 players, you've obviously got to land on both those points on the encoder. So in this case, when we're talking about the board, the X-Men board, the X-Men encoder board, you need 2 connections per player. So up and down, left and right is going to be 2 different plugs or sockets on the actual encoder. So how do you do that? Well, there's a couple different ways you can do it. You could take a couple of these joysticks. You could take the stock joystick if you wanted, and you could just splice this together. I didn't want to do that because of the way this was sort of kind of messy. To take all these individual wires and then splice them, I didn't think I wanted to do that and mess with this. And because, at the end of the day, this is just a stock joystick. It's not the best in the world. So what I decided to do was go with SandWalk controls because they have this nice little clean plug right here, these little 5 prongs right there. Makes it nice and simple when you consider the wiring harnesses that you can get from DIY Retro Arcade. These are going to be, first off, you got to know what your encoder looks like. So we know it's going to be 2 different ports, two different sockets for your directional controls. So you have them make up an adapter for you that goes from SandWalk to those 2 controls. Now, what I had to do, because I'm doing 4 players, so I had to get 4 of these and then combine them. So here's what those look like separate, and here's what they look like after you install them and splice them together. So taking your time obviously makes a big difference. You can see this is actually a pretty neat little harness. And basically all I did was I cut the end off of one harness. You see about right there, and then that is where I made my individual connections. Bring 2 wires in, land them there. What I did is I took the insulation back. I spliced them by actually soldering. Didn't want to do some kind of a wire nut or some kind of adapter. I thought that that would be too bulky because you can see you've got 5 wires here, 5 connections, individual connections. And I thought that if by the time you use 5 different adapters, that would just look too bulky. It'd be too much. So this is going to be your adapter for a single SandWalk to go to 2 different places, player 1 and player 2 on that encoder. And the buttons are going to be even simpler because there's really no soldering required. This is what your standard Arcade1up button connectors look like. They're just got crimp-on fittings. So what I did is I just took 2 and brought them together, and I just used different stake-on, crimp-on fittings with little plastic protectors. And that's how I'm going to take one button and land it on 2 different sockets on the encoder. So we're going to have to do this. See, that side's done. Player 1's done. Player 2, joystick's going to be done next. That'll be done. And then I've got basically 4 per side, 8 buttons total. I'm going to have to come up with 8 different button connectors there just for the action buttons. Then for player 1, 2, and 3, those are going to continue to be individual connections. So I just have to make sure I have enough connectors to make that happen. So yeah, player 1, 2, and 3 are going to be individuals going to individual sockets. These are going to go to 2 different sockets. Same thing with these. And hopefully this will allow us to play every game and have every option available to us on this encoder. Even though you don't like the other 2 games, or maybe you do, I don't know. But I just, Captain America and the Avengers is good. But the other one, the Battle Garbage Data East game, not a big fan of. But doesn't matter. We're going to include that functionality in this conversion. Okay, so once you start doing the math, you're going to realize that you're not going to have enough wiring harness for all the buttons and the joysticks to make this work, because we're going from a 6-button panel with 2 start buttons to an 8-button panel with 4 player start buttons. So it's not going to work out, so you're going to have to do something. Those little connectors on the encoders, kind of hard to find, and if you want to keep your wiring stock for the most part, you're going to want to use stock wiring. So it's just for this reason that I decided to keep many years ago when I started all this, to keep all my old wiring harness, all my old buttons, for situations like this. And of course you can see I've got a lot to choose from. And this is the point where the project kind of took a turn for the worst. The idea was to reuse this control panel and just drill new holes and then cover up some of the holes and just kind of make that work. But when I started to take it apart, the way that Arcade1up does this new paint or laminating technique for the artwork on the control panels, it doesn't really work well when they super glue the bezels for the on-off and volume switches. They do that on everything. When you try to remove that, it just ends up destroying it. I mean, it maybe could have been salvaged, but I would have had to fill that in with some wood filler and all that. I thought, why not just go ahead and use this as a template, and let's just start all over. Let's make a brand new control panel. So that's what I'm doing here. Just using my table saw to copy the exact same measurements, width and length and all that. And then, we're just going to build it from scratch. Probably the better way to go at the end of the day. Okay, I've got the new artwork redesigned, corrected, and ordered, so that should be here hopefully this week. Now I turn my attention to the edge of the control panel, and this is going to be based on really whatever wood you're using. MDF is a little bit better than plywood as far as the end grain is concerned, but still, it's not perfect, it's not smooth, and I wanted to kind of retain that look. That's kind of the whole point of this, retain the stock look of the cabinet. So I tried to peel off this edge banding, this blue edge banding, and while I had some success with the heat gun, you can see this is not going to really lay flat, and I don't know if you can tell there's some lines in it, little creases. So to get this thing to lay flat was going to be a challenge. I'd have to get some different adhesive and all that, and then I don't know, was that going to really look the best? I don't know, who knows. I could have ended up with something janky looking like that. So I decided to go ahead and just forget about that, and I'm just going to simply take a round over bit and just round over these hard edges here, top and bottom, right? And then I'll take my vinyl, which I've ordered a little bit long, and just go all the way underneath this. So it'll just be one continuous flow with the artwork. So I think it's going to look fine. I would have rather have maintained this, but this is modification, boys. It is what it is. Because this isn't 100% perfect, you get some overlap, top and bottom and all that. You got to line it up as best you can by feel. Start from the left and go to the right before I've worked top to bottom, holding it in place with my right arm here. Not 100% perfection. That's okay. It's okay. What we have here is a close enough, you know, so. Let me know in the comment section what you would have done differently. What would you do differently? How would you have done things differently? Tell me all about your great ideas. Let's get this mounted, and we'll talk about all the ways that I messed this up. It was a little crooked. Yeah, it's a little crooked, but it'll be all right. As long as it'll fold over. Oh, that's not bad. Oh, I thought it was looking. See, it's not. I think it's just the way that the X-Men pattern is. Oh, yeah, I thought it was crooked. It's not crooked. It's not crooked. I'm better than I thought. Okay, so after many attempts at playing around with the different configurations, you see what we finally have as far as the wiring goes now. It's backwards. So on this side we have player 1, player 2, flip it around, and this is how we're going to have to control this. So I originally thought I'd have player 1 and 2 wired together. I'm sorry, 1 and 3 wired together, and then I would have 2 and 4 wired together. Well, that's not going to work because of that third game, that Data East game that everyone just loves on this cabinet. So what we're going to have to do is have player 1 and 2 over here. You can see all the wiring is bundled up nice and neat and gorgeous. And then players 3 and 4 over here. So that's the way that's going to work. Intentionally didn't label these 1, 2, 3, and 4 because I just want to kind of mimic the colors of the original control panel, but that is the way that looks. This is tested. This does work. But just so you know, you're going to have to actually have 1 and 2 connected and then 3 and 4 connected on the X-Men version if you're trying to do this for the X-Men cabinet. And then also, if you're curious about some of the encoder colors, using the controls up here for X-Men, the brown part, the brown connector on the encoder is jump, orange is attack, green is the mutant power, and then of course blue is what you use for the Data East fighting game that I don't like. Okay, let's go put this on the cabinet.
X-Men.
Finally, I have the Konami X-Men Deluxe cabinet that Arcade1up should have made a couple years ago, but in some ways I'm glad they didn't, because it allowed me to make what I believe is a better collaboration cab between the X-Men 97 cartoon and my favorite beat 'em up from the 90s. This cabinet is just different enough from my other deluxe projects to really stand out, and of course I love having the X-Men game back in my arcade. There are a few things I wish I could change, maybe line up the text a little bit more, get them centered on those buttons. But I do love the black and white take on that classic X-Men background that looks really good when the lights are on, but somehow even better under the black light glow. With that black T molding and the white letters, this thing really shines, and it complements all the other deluxe cabinets, all these projects that I've made on my channel. I've really enjoyed them, and I think Arcade1up kind of nailed the 3/4 size with the deluxe cabinets. And speaking of those deluxe projects, I did create a new playlist. If you want to check out all the details of these builds, you can click on the link right here. So let me know what you think about all this in the comments section below. Thank you so much for stopping by and checking out the channel. Y'all have a blessed day, and I'll see all of you next time.